Well, welcome everyone. We're excited to see you here with us for the first in a series of 3 Complete Streets workshops that will continue tomorrow and Thursday nights at the same time. We'll start with a few meeting logistics. So your microphones are muted for the first part of the presentation. And please use the chat feature in Zoom to make comments and submit questions. After the presentation, we'll stay online to answer your questions, all of your questions, and this meeting is being recorded. So our agenda tonight starts with opening comments from the first selectman, Matt Hoey, who we're honored to have with us. And then from Sam Garretts, who's the chair of the committee. Then Sam is going to introduce the task force team and mission, and Tom from Schmidt Design will introduce the design group team, and then also explain where we are in the project timeline, give some goals for the meeting, and then we're going to do polling questions and a very short Complete Streets review for anyone who's new to the topic. Then we're going to go over the public input we've received to date and then tell you the format for the breakout group session. Then we will have the breakout group session and reporting out. And preview the next 2 workshops, have closing comments and questions, and explain the project next steps. It's my honor to present First Selectman Matt Hoey.
Holly, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm not sure it's an honor. I get to speak an awful lot. I hope what I say makes sense. And it's also good to speak first, as opposed to being behind Sam, who is much more knowledgeable about what we're talking about tonight than I am. But thank you, Sam, as chair, and to the entire task force for offering your time, your talents, and your passion in service to our community. Thank you also to the Schmidt Design Group and Holly for the work that you all are doing to pull this together. As Sam and I had talked about on numerous occasions, and the reason we put some funding alongside this task force, which is rather unusual, was that we knew that there were talent gaps that we had that could only be filled by some professionals, and we're thrilled to be led by the Schmidt Design Group. So I also want to just briefly mention today's walk was a wonderful community event. It engendered so many conversations for me with different people. I'm not sure how many people we had on that walk. There's at least 20, 25, I think, in that number. But it was an actual wonderful exercise to walk through our community with others and get their impressions and their suggestions. One thing that's important, and this is particularly for those of you, the interested community members who are part of this, who don't have a dog in the fight other than looking to make hoping to make our streets safer for everyone. We as a community botched a couple of efforts, and those were related to the Nut Plains pathway and the Greenway Trail. And it was largely because we did not engage the community. We did not reach out. We just presented de facto what wanted to be done, or what certain people wanted to have done. So it's imperative that we do this in a different fashion. And that fashion is community engagement. And I'm thrilled to be part of, I think this is one of 4 events this week that I will participate in with this committee. But it's imperative that folks in the community give us their input. We've started to see some of that with some of the surveys we put up online. I think at the initial presentation in February, we had over 100 attendees. This is what makes communities work effectively together, because everyone has a seat at the table. So thank you all for all the work you're doing, those on the task force, Schmidt Design Group, and those in the public who are willing to commit to contribute as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And I'm simply just the messenger. I'm Sam Garretts. I'm the chair of the Safe Streets Task Force. I'm really just the messenger, and it's my honor to represent this really wonderful group of folks who Matt had a lot of input in selecting the people who became part of the task force. And one of the things I really want to highlight is that there's a lot of diversity in this task force. The people who live all over the community, and there are also people who represent a lot of different points of view, including folks who express pretty strong opposition to things like the Nut Plains Pathway or the Shoreline Greenway Trail. And so we have a lot, this diversity means that we, I believe, are representing the community really well. I also want to highlight that there are a number of town officials who've been very closely engaged with our task force work, and they're listed below. It's really been a wonderful collaboration with everybody. And, you know, for me, it's been a real honor to get to know all the folks in the team. So if we go to the next slide. I want to keep this brief because I think people have probably seen this before. But the mission of our task force is to accomplish two things. One is to keep Guilford, Guilford. You know, this is a special place. We all have a really soft place in our heart for a lot of the sites within the town. And the task force is not intending to do anything that is counter to the historic nature of our town. However, we do need to improve the safety, mobility, equity, and connectivity for our residents. I somehow lost the S there. And one of the words, one of the phrases I'd really like to focus on is mobility equity. That means that no matter what your mode of transportation is, you have equal access to our fine community as anybody else. And, you know, I think we even saw an example today that we still have a ways to go in terms of accomplishing that. And, you know, as Matt had mentioned, we want to do this through a community-centered and a transparent process. So this meeting is being recorded. Our meeting in February is recorded if you want to see that presentation. And of course, our monthly meetings, which are the second Thursday of every month at 7 p.m., are open to the public. One last point I want to make is that one of the first important things that we accomplished as a task force was to get the Board of Selectmen to adopt a complete streets resolution. And you'll hear a lot more about complete streets. We also use the phrase safe streets to mean complete streets. So if you hear us using those terms, they're interchangeable. But the point of doing the complete streets resolution was that aligns us with the state of Connecticut, which has already adopted its own complete streets resolution. And we used a lot of the same language. The point with that is that means that the state roads are being designed under the same parameters as the town roads. And that was an important accomplishment. And it was really the work of the task force to get that done. So with that, why don't we move on to the next slide, and Holly, you can take it from here.
Actually, I'll take it, Sam.
Oh, sorry, Tom.
I'm going to introduce our team. And first and foremost, I want to introduce you to Kim Gray, who's from my first coaching client. She's a Zoom expert, and she's going to help us get through this. And we're just so happy to have her on the team to take a little pressure off of us, so she can help out. If you have any problems in the breakouts, go back to the main room and talk to Kimberly. She will set you up and get you in the right spot. I'm Tom Tavella. I'm the East Coast Director of for Schmidt Design Group and the project manager for this project. And I have Phil Swagger, and also we have a friend in our West Coast office, Ian, with us as well, who'll be popping in and out. And then I have my consultants with me, Les Rhodes Travel, Holly Parker, Carolyn, and Eric, who are transportation planners and experts in public input. So that's why they're all going to be doing most of the leading of this. And then we have Beta Engineering, which is our transportation engineers and our civil engineers. So we have tonight with us Joe, and we also have Emily Slotnick with us, who will be in some of the breakout rooms. Najib is not with us tonight, but he's definitely watching over the quality control of what Beta is doing. So let's go to the next slide. Project timeline. We started this project in December, and we started our data collection. Of course, December was wonderful and gave us lots of snow. So we were a little bit delayed in some of the data collection, but we've gone through that, and We finally made it out to April and the sun's shining, and we started our public engagement process, which these 3 nights are the main portion of that. We did one earlier on the education of complete streets. And then later on, when it comes into May, June, we're going to start our quick builds. And then we start our adoption and implementation aspect of it. And to the next slide. So for tonight's workshop, I think we've said this 100 times, maybe more, but we are still in the dialogue stage. We want to hear from you. We don't want to think that we know everything. We want you to tell us what your thoughts are about your community and what you think your roads and streets and mobility needs to be, so we can put it into our equations and give you the best solutions for your community. So tonight, we're going to talk about complete streets really quickly before people that may not have been on the earlier workshop. We're going to talk about our walking tour today that we had, which was beautiful. We had about 25 people there. It was great. Then we're going to split you up into breakout rooms by your neighborhood or a neighborhood that you want to talk about. And then we're going to ask one of you from each of those to present back to the bigger group. And then Eric is going to talk about tomorrow's interactive design session, which is with Street Mix. It's a real fun way to design your own roads. And then we'll open it up for meetings and comments. And then as we go through this, tomorrow we'll introduce the interactive session and do the Street Mix. Again, asking people to present back to us and then opening up for questions. And then on Thursday, we're going to gather all the information that you gave us, and we're going to give you specific typologies that we heard from you, and through our lens as professionals, as well as some plan view of what we can do with some of these streets out there, and get your reactions to it. And then we can start getting into the details of preparing the guidelines for you. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Holly to do her thing.
And Kim, who's going to be running the poll for us. So this is our first poll question. Where do you live? And just use the polling function to respond.
I guess if you don't live in town and you're still here, you can pick a community or a neighborhood that you want to be in.
How do we poll on this thing, or how do we respond? Where do we do that?
Just hit the dot
Hit the dot.
and then hit submit.
I don't see a dot anywhere. We just hit the number on the screen.
Oh, the poll.
I got a
flash.
menu that showed up, and I got the, like a list of.
I did not. Let me see.
There should be a circle there that you can click on and hit submit.
There should have been a dialog box that popped up.
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll keep looking.
There's also an icon called polls in the icon bar at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Should be anyway.
No, they can't see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So are you telling me I should have updated my Zoom? It was telling me to update and I did not.
That could be the case. You could type your response in the chat
Okay.
as an alternative.
What happens if there is no address close to you?
Well, take a look at the map and see if that helps you decide which part of town you'd like to join the discussion about.
We're on State Street.
Whoever has the control of the cursor, can you just show
State
that?
Street, north or south of 95.
We're north of 95.
That would put you in 4.
4. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we've had pretty good response. Should we keep it open a couple more minutes or seconds? We have, oh,
Yep.
80% voted. It would be great if everyone was able to respond, so we have an idea how to break out, how to break you out into groups.
Mm. Still coming in.
You getting some responses in the chat too, Kim?
No.
Do you see one from Kimberly Schmid? To everyone?
Yeah,
Yes,
number
I saw
five.
it. I
Okay,
saw it.
I put 5.
Mm.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Got it. 87%.
I don't think it's still.
You ready? You want me to stop?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. Let me share the results.
Yeah.
Ooh.
All right. A lot of you are in area 4.
Mm-hmm.
4 and 7.
4 and 7 are where the majority are from. All right. That's very helpful. Thank you. So next we're going to do a really quick review of complete streets, and not all streets are complete when they don't need to have all of these elements. The really important thing is that it's a safe, comfortable, and convenient to travel by foot, bicycle, transit, and automobile, regardless of your age or ability. That's the really important point. And this slide here is about why it actually you feel a visceral response to speeding cars. If a car hits a person at 40 miles an hour, the crash results in death 85% of the time, whereas at 20 miles an hour, death only results in 5% of cases. I think I skipped a slide. I did. So this slide here also shows how the design of a road influences the speed people travel on it. A wide travel lane with good visibility actually induces speed. It invites you to speed up. So just changing, narrowing a travel lane or changing the angle of the curb, as this image shows, slows traffic. And it can be a lot more effective to make someone feel as if they're going too fast than trying to tell them or ticket them. So now we're going to do another poll. And I'm asking you, the question here is this a complete street?
Complete street?
I have no idea what they're talking
What
about.
does that mean?
I can go back a couple of slides. So that's talking about having streets that have these kinds of treatments. So did they have crosswalks? Do they have ramps so people in wheelchairs or pushing baby carriages can get easily across them? Is there a bus shelter to shelter the person waiting for the bus? Is there a safe place to wait for the bus?
Would work.
Is there sidewalk?
Walk over there.
And do you feel safe walking down the
And
street
do you feel safe?
or biking down the street?
Exactly. All right, that's a pretty good response. You want to show us the results, Kim? All right, I'm not going to comment until we get through all of them. We've got a couple more to look at. Whoops. Is this a complete street?
No, Paul. Now we gotta eliminate this.
It goes to mute all the time.
I have no idea.
Is that street in Madison?
Yes. Middle Beach Road.
I thought so.
Yeah, that's right. All right. All right, one more street.
Good.
How about this one? Is this a complete street? All right. Well, this was an intentionally tough exercise. For the answers, I'm simply going to remind you that what's essential is that the street is complete if it's safe and comfortable and convenient for all of its users, regardless of their age or ability. In this case, you know, you probably wouldn't see a car and a bicycle and a pedestrian all trying to use the road at the same time because it's probably not very heavily traveled. So in that case, it might sway more towards complete than not. But it depends actually also on the speed limit and the way people use the street. So we've had a lot of feedback from you by several means, and one is the monthly mobility surveys, an independent entity called Zen City that's working for the town of Guilford created. They've been doing these monthly mobility surveys as part of this, as part of their engagement with the town. The first survey question of the month asked which modes of transportation you use regularly. And then although 97% of respondents do drive alone, 63% also walk and 20% bicycle. So the follow-up to this question was Guilford residents were asked what would encourage you to use another mode of transportation. And you told us that inadequate bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure were the leading concerns, preventing you from getting around by foot, by bike or on foot. Some of the concerns about safety and COVID-19 are policy related, and we'll be looking at policy as part of this project as well as it progresses. The second survey of the month question asked, are there parts of Guilford you'd like to bike or walk to but feel unsafe doing so? And the message in this response is pretty loud and clear. The second part of the second question, there's a lot to digest here, but suffice it to say that respondents most frequently mentioned Long Hill Road as in need of sidewalks or a path in order to walk or bike safely, and emphasized that there are 3 schools on this road, but it's too dangerous for children to walk along. Lack of sidewalks had the most mentions overall, followed by speeding traffic and narrow roads. So respondents repeatedly asked for safety interventions on roads leading into town or along scenic routes. Whoops. So overall, these were the roads that were most mentioned as having problems relative to a complete street. Speeding and reckless driving were noted as dangers to bicyclists and pedestrians. And road characteristics like narrow widths or tight turns have been mentioned as dangerous as well. Sidewalks or trails were requested on a number of roads, as have crosswalks. Confusing road design and signage was also mentioned, especially at certain intersections. And Carolyn is now going to give us a quick review of today's walking tour, which again had a great turnout and excellent observations. Carolyn?
Yeah, thank you, Holly. And thank you to everyone who came out to the walking tour. It was, as Matt Hoey said, really informative and discussion provoking. So we're just going to go through a couple of the themes that came out here this tour. We started at the corner by Page Hardware, and so there was some talk about bump outs perhaps being needed that could accommodate some dining and public space and narrow the amount of road that someone has to cross. We did have some discussion about wheelchair accessibility. There were some spots where the infrastructure was definitely not there for wheelchairs or for carriages. And there are some spots where it meets code, but it's still not good design for the perspective of someone in a wheelchair. We saw that, the downtown area compared to other spots in Guilford has relatively abundant pedestrian infrastructure, but it's not all accessible or safe. There are some sidewalk connectivity issues, places where the sidewalk ends suddenly. And there's some connections that are still needed to important destinations. We went by the nursery school. We looked at the connection to the train station. There's certain spots where signage or sharrows would be useful. And there are also certain spots where the placement of crosswalks was perhaps not ideal. And we discussed the New England Trail going through here and how that's a valued asset and how that could be improved. So these are some more photos. We can see a couple of interesting places here. There's a crosswalk that definitely does not have a ramp leading up to it. It was one of the more egregious things that we saw there. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us for that.
Thanks, Carolyn. The picture in the lower right is, you see the blue blazes on the tree indicating that that is part of the New England Trail network, the segment of it that's on street. So we also talked about the importance of connecting trail with street so that you have a real true network for people to get to destinations. So we are going to start the breakout group sessions now. So take a look at the map again and remember which neighborhood number you chose. We're going to split out into virtual breakout rooms for 20 minutes and have a discussion there among ourselves, selecting one person in the group to be a spokesperson and report back when you wrap up.
So let's tell them how to get into the breakout rooms. You will see breakout rooms at the bottom of your screen. If you click on that, you will see a number of breakout rooms. Pick the one you want, and you can jump around and in and out. Does everyone see that?
No.
Yeah, you actually have to scroll down in the screen that shows up to find the name of the neighborhood and the number that corresponds.
Do you see more?
I see a list of names that are unassigned.
You might, but they don't because they're not host and co-host. So they might have to look under more. You see a more button?
Yes.
You see breakout rooms from there. If you click on that, the list will show up.
Where does the word more appear?
It should be on one of your taskbars.
Pasquat?
Taskbar at the bottom of your screen.
No, well, that's
There are three
microscopic, right?
dots. Three
Yeah.
dots in the word.
Oh,
no.
Could
three
be the
dots,
three
huh?
dots. Hmm.
3 dots.
I'm afraid this is not working. So
Not for you.
no 3 dots and
Yeah.
no word more.
Well, some people are moving over, so I know it's working. You just might not can see it, and that's okay.
You go down.
At the bottom of your screen, if you'll see, it'll either say more or you'll see 3 dots. If you click on either of those, you'll get a list of options, and breakout rooms or chat will show up there.
No, not seeing it.
We can't see
We're
it.
not seeing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Okay.
Can you
Okay.
just put me into it maybe, or do I have to?
I can put you in.
Okay.
It's kind of defeating the purpose of.
I know. You know,
Where would you like to go, Kimberly?
I would like to go to 5, please.
Okay. Ms.
So would I.
Fries, Robert, Mr. Yero, is that you?
Yeah, I can go to either 5 or 6.
Which one would you prefer?
I live in 5, I guess, but I obviously spend a lot of time. 6 is across the street, so it doesn't really matter.
All right.
Put me wherever you need somebody.
Okay. Mr. Irving, where would you like to go?
I live in, also live on 5. So
Okay. I'll put you in there for now. Who else needs help? Ms.
We do.
Fries,
Freeze. 4.
for the freeze?
4.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Ms.
Who
Kim,
else?
hi, it's Ed Huguenot. Can you put me into 4 as well?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Yarrow, where would you like to go?
I can either, I don't have the numbers in front of me any longer, either Moose Hill or the coastal Sachem's Head.
Sechem's Head? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who else needs help getting in a room?
I do actually. I need to get into room 1. This is
Oh,
Holly.
Hi, Holly.
How are
Okay.
you?
Good, thanks. Okay, there you go. Lauren, how about you?
Can I get to number 7?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mary Jo, where would you like to go?
Oh, well, I'm in 7, but it's popular, so I was wondering if I should go somewhere else.
Oh, you don't want to be where the party is?
Well, I'm happy to.
Okay, I'll put you in there. You could jump around if you want to
All
move
right,
out.
I'll
Okay.
start there.
Okay. Eric, how about you? I can't hear you.
I've got the ability to move around. I'm fine.
Okay, you're fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else need help? Stephen, Gregory?
Hi, yeah, if you go, you
Higgins?
pop, I'm Stephen Robinson. If you pop me in 4, I believe is where I'm geographically
Okay, here we go.
destined.
And,
All right.
and Higgins in 4.
Higgins. I don't see you on my list. Let's see.
Says EC Higgins.
I see that, but, oh, wait a minute, maybe you're up here. There you are. Number 4, you said?
Right.
Thank you. Okay,
Can you put Stephen Stoll in 6?
thank you. There you go. Anyone else? If you can jump around, you can do your thing. Okay, I think we're good. I'm going to stop the recording, pause.
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a lively discussion as we did in group 4. So we're gonna now have the spokesperson from each group report out. Who is our spokesperson for group 1?
Well, it could be either Tamara or Holly or myself, because it was 3 of us.
Okay.
I'll defer to them if they'd like to talk. If not, I will do the talking.
Go ahead, Tom.
Okay. So on the first question, which is, if you could change one thing, what would it be? Adding bike lanes or sidewalks through the area would be helpful. shared space on Great Hill and Long Hill for bike and peds would be helpful. What they loved about it is the peace and quiet. There's not a lot of cars many times. So the walkability and bikeability on the roads is pretty good, although people coming through Guilford and cutting through it are the ones that are speeding more than the residents, because the residents kind of know everybody's routine. So that was a good thing and a concern. And there's lots of trails to walk to. On question 3, we did stick with Long Hill and Great Hill as the road to concentrate on. And then on Great Hill and Long Hill, the connections to the schools, I should say, that's a weakness. The kids can't really walk and bike to school at this time. But they also said that they love the scenic aspects of these roads. So if you're going to do some interventions, how can you do it to keep with the aesthetics of the neighborhood? That was the main thing. We didn't get to the 4th question or the 5th question. What are the top destinations? But I just, by hearsay, I could say it's the schools and the churches. So how can you do that? And, you know, specifically looking at the intersection of Country Road and Long Hill Road, there's tons of pavement out there, and tightening up those radiuses so people can't speed around those corners would do amazing things for that intersection itself. You can even be really radical and maybe do a mini roundabout if you had the will to do it. I'm not sure if people would like that, but that would definitely slow down traffic. And Holly and Tamara, if I said anything wrong, or jump right in there.
That was great. That was pretty much everything, I think. That we.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Do we have a spokesperson for group 2?
2 and 3 where no one was in those 2 rooms.
Oh, okay. I guess we move straight to 4, which was our group. Jim? You'll have to unmute.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I don't know if we went line by line for questions, but the areas that we talked about were North Madison Road, Nut Plains, Maupus, around this elementary school down there. But they said if we could change one thing, that was the question that was posed, what would it be? And there were people that high desirability for a separate bike lane. And we talked a little bit about what the requirements of a bike lane might be, like a 5-foot width. But aside from that being the top of the list, what might make more sense? And basically, it would be something that might be a sharrow, or something that would offer feeling a little bit more safe on that particular path. Maybe a fog line also. The next thing we talked about were areas that might be desirable. And Melissa talked about a Maupus Road trailhead, which is off of North Madison Road, which had mixed blessings. I think that was a desirable place to go, but at the same time, Maupus Road was a very dangerous spot to walk and travel. But she felt comfortable, and it seemed like a pretty good destination because there's some trails around there. Timberland is one of them. Then we started talking about questions as to how many respondents talked about how they traveled through the town of Guilford. There were 628 responses. 20% of those people were bicyclists are 125. And so you get kind of an idea of how many people might be bicycling around the town of Guilford. And something had been talked about as to what people would really like to see. And this one individual lived off of Long Hill Road, but felt that the main arteries could use more areas that would be separate, like a sidewalk or a path. We talked about children using those and the safety around that. So that would be something that we thought we could benefit from if that would be possible on the main arteries going into town. I would agree with that. One of the other things that was talked about, other areas that would be desirable would be on Nut Plains, for example, there's the dog park. There are some play fields, those are destinations. But at the same time, there are some pretty narrow spots on that Nut Plains Road. So I thought maybe we could benefit from things like sharrows or warnings that there are more than just cars on the road to try and slow the traffic down. And I think that about covers it, unless you have other things to add, Holly, or anybody else in that group.
I think you nailed it, Jim. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Group 5?
Yes.
Spokesperson?
Yes, that was our group. So what we talked about, things to improve would be the shoulder on Route 146. It's just, I think like we all know, right? Just, there is no shoulder at times. And if there's any way to, move those white lines in so that the cyclists and, scooters and people moving a little slower feel a little safer over there. Or, if that's not possible, then some type of signage, marking, something that makes it more obvious that to share the road with cyclists. And we also talked about extending the sidewalk on Water Street. It's probably, I think it might be the shortest distance out you can walk when leaving town. You can go east, north, and south, I think, for further than you can go west on Water Street. That sidewalk only extends 1/3 of the mile from the town center. So it's not, it doesn't go out very far. And just west of town, you have a lot of big neighborhoods, and then you also have Westwoods. And I would say that was the one thing we just unanimously agreed that the thing that is really good on the west side of town is Westwoods. And we all live on all different sections. Westwoods is so big that we all have access to it, which is fantastic. But then a comment was also made, well, if we value safety, then where do we feel safe? And the answer was, well, nowhere. There was no representative road for some people in our group that they felt safe at all. So we also talked about how we have the elementary school, A.W. Cox is right there, and it just needs so much attention. It's, like Melissa Jones, right? We don't even have a single sidewalk on the school property. The sidewalk goes up to it, but there's nothing even on the school property. So it's just kind of feels like a big oversight. And the school doesn't just attract little kids. They have playing fields, basketball courts that are being accessed regularly by the teenagers. And they're coming in on bicycles, scooters, skateboards. And, they're coming in off of roads like, they're coming down from Long Hill, they're coming up on a 3 Mile Course, Wild Rose. So all of our roads are kind of similar on the west side of town in that they're all very narrow. I don't think they haven't really been updated. The state roads have, and the south end of Long Hill has been updated over time, but the rest of the roads, Moose Hill, 3 Mile Course, they're all just the old, tiny, very narrow roads with not a lot of room on the sides. There's rock walls, there's a lot of trees. But we picked Moose Hill as the road that we'd like to work on over the next couple of days. And our points of destination would be the elementary school, town center, Westwoods, and like Bishops and things like that. Did I miss anything, team 4, team 5?
That's great. Thanks, Kim.
No.
Excellent.
I'm just gonna say, I don't think there's a lot of interest in widening roads in our part of town, or maybe any other part of town. The notion if you widen them, the cars are just gonna go faster.
Yeah, we talked about that as well a bit in team 5.
All right. Then are we on 6?
Right, I was on group 6. So we actually were representing 2 different areas. I happen to live on or off of Mulberry Point, closer to Indian Cove. And then a couple of us live towards Leeds Island. So the obvious road that we were discussing was Route 146, and I think that's been somewhat covered. But there was the suggestion about the possibility of what's called an advisory shoulder. And I'm not totally understanding what that is, but there was a nice diagram that we were shown, and that would make some sense. The problem that we identified, that I think we all are identifying, is just the speeding. The speeding on Route 146 is really, pretty consistent, and that something like an advisory shoulder could slow down traffic. I think we were saying could slow it down from maybe the average about 48 miles per hour to about 25 miles per hour. And that would be, or at least certainly be, a big difference. Where I am, and one thing that hasn't been mentioned, is Mulberry Point and then out to Chaffinch Island. And I think that's probably one of the prettiest areas in all of Guilford. But Mulberry Point itself is a road, long, windy, like all the rest of them. And speeding is a problem, and a lot of blind curves on it. So I've done things like I started to just cut over from Mulberry Point onto Chaffinch Island Road and kind of go around back behind and then come back out on Mulberry Point Road, just to avoid some of the narrow areas. So anything that we could do with Mulberry Point would be wonderful, because once people get down there, once you get to Chaffinch Island or you get into Tuttle's or Indian Cove, I mean, those roads are pretty quiet. I mean, they're never going to be wide enough, but they're certainly lovely for biking and certainly lovely for walking. So I think I'd like to see Mulberry Point addressed in some way. And I think that was, and I think we all agreed that it was the character of the neighborhood that we really appreciate where we are, and certainly the ability to go from town to a rural road to the waterfront down by Tuttle's to see marshes. I mean, there's so much variety in that section of town that I think it'd be well worth trying to make some improvements to it for access. So I think that's it. We were saying.
Great. Thank you. That's wonderful. Well, we just have one group left then, and that is group 7, downtown Guilford.
I don't know if we decided on a spokesperson, but I took some notes so I can discuss what we talked about. So we had downtown Guilford. One of the things we talked about was the fact that there is a lot of good infrastructure, or starting point for good bicycle pedestrian infrastructure, but there is still a lot of work to be done. One of the things that everyone valued about living in the downtown area was that it was relatively walkable. There's a lot of things to do, a lot of great attractions. Some of the attractions we talked about were, of course, the green, the marina, the fairgrounds. I would add some destinations might be the train station or some of the schools in the area, the Whitfield Museum. So there's a lot of great assets in the downtown area. It's just a matter of kind of making sure they're all connected and accessible. So some of the things that were brought up were, better sidewalk connectivity based on the walking tour this morning. I think we all saw that there are sidewalks, but just not all of them are connected or accessible. And the same is true for crosswalks. Crossings are very important, especially since there's a lot of vehicular traffic in the downtown area. Making sure that people can get across the street safely is very important. We also talked about the possibility of having off-street trails, things like possibly a cut through from Union Street to the Big Y Plaza, just different ways of kind of getting around town that don't necessarily involve being really close to speeding cars. Let's see. We also talked about the potential for bump outs or narrower lanes as a means to slow traffic. And when we got to the question about a representative street, Whitfield Street was brought up because it is a very important connection between the green and the water that a lot of people use for walking and biking. But it is also kind of a straightaway that people in cars speed down a lot. So there's some desire to redesign that street. We also talked about Union Street as being representative of the area, and Union Street is a possibility for something like an advisory shoulder where there is enough visibility to see oncoming traffic, and again, a spot where a lot of people walk and bike already. So I don't know if there's anything anyone else from the group wants to add, but feel free.
Would just throw in that we also talked about the intersection of Boston Street and Route 1, where the New England Trail actually crosses on its way up to Clapboard Hill, to actually get into the woods. And that's dangerous for cyclists, for cars. And I've never even thought about trying to cross that as a pedestrian. I mean, maybe the coast is clear at some point, but that's a pretty busy spot.
Great. Well, you've given us a lot to think about, and this is maybe the best advertisement I can think of for showing up again tomorrow night at the same time to talk about these issues in more detail and through the lens of an actual street design tool that Eric is going to tell us about.
Yeah, thanks. And why don't we look at the next slide? We do very much hope that all of you come back tomorrow, and encourage your friends and neighbors and family to join us as well. We're going to be doing an exercise tomorrow that we think will be both fun and interesting and maybe a little eye-opening for everybody. So for each of the neighborhoods that we've determined, we're going to be looking at a single street together and using this online tool called Street Mix, which allows you to sort of plug and play, as it were, different street uses. And we will sort of preset everything on here for you with the proper width. We'll note the current width of the road, but we'll also note the current width of the entire town-owned right-of-way. And if we could advance to the next slide, Holly. So what you do is you see along the bottom, there's all these different potential uses of the street, everything from street trees, sidewalks, bike lanes, motor vehicle lanes. If this weren't a static image, we could scroll over to the right and you'd see that there's also icons for buses and streetcars and all sorts of things. So what you see here is that we've dropped in cars going in different directions, and we see that having done so, that there is 6 feet left over, which allows us to put a 6-foot sidewalk in on the existing width of the street. Let's say you wanted to put in 2 motor vehicle lanes, but also see if there was room for bike lanes. Let's go to the next slide. As you can see here, there isn't quite enough room for bike lanes on the existing curb to curb width of Long Hill Road, where it's 28 feet wide. And it tells you that you've run out of room by turning the grass pink. And up at the top there, under the name of the street, it tells you how many feet over you've gone. We're gonna be playing around with this for a little while tomorrow evening in each of the rooms. And I think you all don't need to do any prep work in advance, but if you're inclined, it's very easy and fast to get your own Street Mix account and play with it on your own time. It's just streetmix.net, and you can sign up with your Gmail account or whatever and play around with it. It's fun and eye-opening. And so that'll be part of tomorrow's workshop. Thanks, Holly.
Yeah, thank you. So this is also part of the what we'll be talking about tomorrow night is this lens of the road classifications to determine, what road designs are possible. Joe, can you tell us a little bit about the road classifications? Did we lose Joe?
Joey,
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
These roadway classifications that we're looking at are determined by DOT and used to group roadways that serve similar transportation needs in terms of the access versus mobility. DOT provides guidance for design elements such as lane widths and shoulder widths based on these classifications. And roadways are classified as either arterials, collectors, or local roads. For an arterial street, its main function is to move traffic. Typically higher speeds are observed. The arterial streets in town are Route 1 and Route 80. Collector roads offer more of a balance between access and mobility. So example collectors in towns would be roads like Long Hill Road or Little Meadow Road. And your local roads typically have low traffic, lower speeds, and they primarily serve to provide access to properties. So a couple examples would be Mulberry Point Road and Great Hill Road.
Great, thank you.
And can I just add really quickly that because of the road typology, there's certain designs you can do and cannot do just because of the volume. So that's why we want you to be aware of the classifications as Joe described them. So it's a matter of how fast the roads are, how many cars are going through. So it does restrict what types of treatments we'll be able to put on those. So, and we'll give you a little bit more of a prep course tomorrow on that.
Yeah, great points, Tom. Thank you.
Sorry, my video was off, but I was talking. I was still talking.
So these are images of the types of treatments that we could be recommending in Guilford. They're examples. So we showed a couple of different kinds of bike lanes just because there are so many different ways that you can do bike lanes and on rural roads, depending on the lane widths and a lot of other constraints. Advisory shoulders are shown in the top right there and a speed table in the bottom right. These are, these are the kinds of things we'll be talking about tomorrow as potential, as we do the street mix exercise, as potential ways to augment the streets and make them safer for bicyclists and pedestrians. So if anyone has any questions, this would be a time to chime in. And if not, I'll give you a little preview of tomorrow night's workshops.
I do have a question. What is the end result of these 3 sessions? There'll be a report or a referral, or what is the end point of these 3 sessions?
Why don't I skip ahead to the last slide here? So we still have, more digesting of the feedback we've gotten from you about how you want to see your streets. in Guilford and what's important to you. Some of the way we're going to demonstrate what the options are is through something called quick builds, where we'll have demonstration projects popping up in 3 locations this summer, and they'll be temporary treatments. So you get to just try them out and see if you like them, and then they go away. But they could come back again if there's support. We're going to have another public meeting also in the summer, probably closer to the end of summertime. And we're also reaching out through the schools, through middle school and high school, to talk to kids about complete streets, because they're really regular users of the road and they don't drive yet, most of them, except the older high schoolers. So they really have a good feel for the roads and what feels safe and how, where they like to go. And they're also going to be running Guilford someday. So they're our future. And ultimately, at the end of all of these discussions, we will have recommendations that we provide to the town of Guilford. And as I alluded to earlier, there is a policy component to all of this as well. So you have things like zoning code, and you have a plan of conservation and development that talks about how you want to plan transportation and land use, among many other things, in the future of Guilford. So we're going to be looking at the language in those sort of guidance documents in Guilford and see if there are things that can be changed there that make it easier to make the kinds of changes that you have suggested.
Yeah, and to add on to what Holly's saying is, we're tasked with giving you guidelines that the town can use. Then it's up to the town to decide where they want to implement them and what type of implementation they would like to do. We're not dictating that you have to do it here or anywhere, but it's what we recommend as professionals that could help your community have safer streets for everybody that's using them: bikes, vehicles, pedestrians, and transit users.
I have a question regarding if the town has already taken property from your land to widen the road, which they did, can they still take it again?
Make more property.
Well,
More property?
It actually depends on where the right-of-way line is, and where your property line is. So it's a hard question to answer on a specific property. Is it your perceived property line, or is it the real property line? So that's hard for us to answer. We don't know where you live and where those lines are. So you probably need to talk to Janice or George in the planning department to figure that out.
Thank you.
Yep.
This is open season on questions. Throw them at us.
Holly, this is Matt. Question revolves around I may be breaking up. I've got some internet connections here problems, but as the map you showed of the collector roads, we have 2 low SIP projects that are still on the books. One of them is still the Nut Plains Road area, and the other is Goose Lane, which goes basically from Nut Plains down to 95. How can what you are doing inform what we do with final design with those projects going forward?
Do you want to explain what lot SIP is?
Yeah, LoSiP is the fast track state and federal funding for highway dollars. So basically, the state and federal dollars pay for the reclamation or the renovation of these roads. So this is, and we have a commitment from our Council of Governments, the state Connecticut with the monies that are available through the Federal Highway Administration. I can't remember where the money comes from, but those are two. And I asked this question trepidatiously because of the problem with Nut Plains Pathway at one point. But how can what you are doing inform the design on those roads?
That's an excellent question. We were really lucky today on the walking tour to have Patrick Zapatka from the Connecticut DOT join us. He's a specialist in what's called the Community Connectivity Program and the roadway safety audits. I think he said he's conducted 110 of them in Connecticut. So he's, having been on the walking tour with us, he took all of this feedback in from us and our observations, and he is taking that back to the Department of Transportation, and he's going to submit a report to us on some of his observations and you know, put it through the lens of what's possible through the state DOT, especially where we are talking about state roads in some cases. Nut Plains and Goose Lane are collector roads, I think, looking at the map. So there may not need to be any intervention from the DOT there, but we're looking forward to seeing what his recommendations are about some of the maybe low-hanging fruit solutions for Guilford's roads. And Tom, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, I think one thing that we learned about Guilford is sometimes the designs are done before public input. So I think this process that we're going through in public information for both Goose Lane and Nut Plain, if you have a very robust public information session with them and kind of understand their concerns and understand what you're trying to achieve with the LoSiP funds, there's probably a middle ground that can help everybody. I think really it comes down to listening to people and understanding their concerns and then working it out together. I've been on a number of projects where that we've come in and helped out a community because they went to loggerheads because of the communication gap. And I think that's something that the residents need to come to the table and voice their concerns, and the leaders of your community and your experts can talk to them and say, but what if we do it this way? It keeps the rural nature of it, and we still can move forward with these funds. So it's kind of a balancing act that you're going to have to do on those, especially on some of the roads that you had to, really push back on you. So we probably have to recycle that and go backwards a little bit to start it up again.
Got it. Tom, thank you for that clarification. And I apologize. Misuse of term, it was the LOTSIP funds that we have, which is different from LoSiP. LOTSIP is the federal program, the fast track federal program, LOTCIP versus LOCIP. Okay. It's taken me 3 years to figure out the difference between the two. So my apologies for the misuse of a term.
Oh, no problem.
I wanted to add that I've heard on the walking tour, and I've heard from more than one person now, that the abutters to any project, not every abutter, but abutters in town seem to want to be a part of the first draft. They want to be at the table when things are first being discussed, first being put down on paper. There's other people in town who don't care. There's others who actually want to see something on paper and then react to that. But there does seem to be a strong undercurrent of really wanting to be a part of that first draft and not being shown the first draft, if that makes sense. And I don't know how possible that is, in a town of this size, logistically and everything else, but I've heard that now more than once, a strong desire to want to be a part of, the initial discussions. So I wanted to pass that on.
Well, I agree, Kim. And this is why we're doing these sessions. We had over 100 people on our first workshop. We're down to 32. It's tough Tuesday nights, Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, kids and work and all that kind of stuff. But we want to be out in front of these things. So we're giving people opportunities to give us feedback. We've got the website up. We've got the interactive mapping up. They can call different committee members. They can contact the consultants as well. So we're trying to be an open book in open dialogue. So we don't run down that road and say, well, you guys just made this up yourself and you didn't listen to us. That's not what we're all about. And that's what I'm finding more and more with Google and video and all the internet. I'm no longer the expert, and people take me for granted and say, oh, he knows everything about this, because they research it and they don't put me to the mat on it. So we're learning that if we don't engage and give the opportunity to engage, we can lose people. But if we give everybody the opportunity to do this, we will have some people that said, I never heard about this workshop. I never heard about this. I never heard about that. But it's advertised and we publicly did it. So it's out there. So they really can't say that. So that's the best way you can get away through that process that you're talking about.
I think something to add to that might be doing like they do with tree removal in town, and that's actually put postings on the routes saying this is happening now, so that the abutters actually can look on signage in their neighborhood saying, hey guys, wake up, there's stuff happening here. If you want to participate, here's when and where and how to do those things.
Right. Was that Glenn?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add also, this is why the task force exists. We have representatives from all neighborhoods in Guilford. And so I think there's some connectivity that's happening between the town and the residents, where we're sort of the intermediary, but we're also really well connected to our friends and neighbors, so that when things like this come up, I think there'll be a greater awareness throughout the community. And, one other thing I would just add is, we are advocating for safety, but we're also advocating for Guilford. And those two things are not mutually exclusive. And so there are times when there are simple projects that it may be proposed, for one example, the Texaco was doing a project there, and we advocated for putting a sidewalk in front. And they said, oh, we didn't know anybody wanted there to be a sidewalk there. And there it went, right? And we hope that there are some discussions that are that straightforward. We certainly understand that things like nut plains and of course the Greenway Trail, those are tougher conversations, but we're not going to have them in isolation.
I also think that we don't know what is ultimately going to come out of Washington with the infrastructure bill, but I think there's lots of positive signs. But the scary thing about this is there may start to be a flood of money that we need to be ready to have a process, because I think, Matt, you raise a good issue, and that is the money's like dropped in your lap and you got to get it done. And sometimes what happens is the project isn't what it really needs to be. And how many times can you just say, no, thank you, because we're not ready yet?
Great.
Or you take the money and it locks you out of getting more money because you haven't spent that money.
Right.
So, in the Tiger grants that we applied for, when that was out there, you had to be shovel ready. So it put a lot of pressure on people to make quick decisions to get something done. But hopefully a process like this gives you the guidelines so you can act quickly and say, all right, let's get this thing designed and ready, because we got a pot of money that's coming down the pike here. And we need this, and the public agrees with you.
I'd like to bring up one other kind of thing, and that is that now that my kids are getting older, recreation is more a part of my life, which is delightful. And I'm always surprised by how close the shore is, and I'm always looking for places to get there. And like, I have a kayak and I'm aspiring to use it more this year. Are there any ways we can include like access to water as the, important recreation like we do trails?
Absolutely. Is
yeah.
that, did you add it as a destination on the community mapping tool?
Well, we said the marina, but I was just down at the Paz place, and I know I could throw my kayak in Sluice Creek there and maybe make it up to the fairgrounds. I'm kind of curious to do that as an adventure, but there are other little places too, and I think it's lovely that there is there was a boating culture here, and I would love to see it thrive.
There are some programs through the state of Connecticut for blueways, which are the waterway networks, as well as greenways and things like that. So that's something that we could definitely look into and take advantage of, especially with access points. There's water access points are very high on DEEP's radar at this point.
One of the sad things is that the water company didn't get the memo. And when they put new piping across bridges, as they did on 146, they put them under the bridge. So it's now even harder to kayak under that bridge and go all the way up the West River.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff. I did a little like limbo shimmy in that pipe a couple times, and I'm not doing that anymore. It's got to get better.
Remember something, that pipe is temporary because they're going to have to raise 146 in that area within the next 20 years anyway.
This has been a great conversation, everyone. If there are no more burning questions, we'll encourage you to come tune in again tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. Did anyone have trouble finding the Zoom link? Was that an issue?
Let's send it out again, Holly.
Yeah, let's make sure. I mean, you all are the mouthpiece of this project. So to Sam's point, there is a task force, and those of you who come to these meetings, like we really do depend on you to talk to your neighbors and your friends and your family in Guilford and encourage them to be part of the discussion too, especially if they are in a butter, or if you know that they've had concerns in the past about transportation related projects or recreation projects. We want to hear from everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, spread the word. Let's get some more people out to design these roads tomorrow.
Just an FYI, it might be helpful to report some of this to the patch. A lot of people read the patch, looking for a forum to disseminate this information.
Also, Simply Guilford, I know my 90-year-old mother-in-law looks at that religiously every day. And it seems like there are a lot of people that have it. So if it isn't on there, I have no idea. I don't go there. I would certainly suggest it.
Yeah, I posted there over the weekend, but I'll do it again.
And Jesse, your patch reporter, was on the walking trip with us, the walking tour today. At least he was there at the beginning, and he took some pictures, I think.
He did.
Yep.
Yeah. Great. We'll keep spreading the word, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks again for joining us.
Night all.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Bye-bye, thanks.
Good night.
See you tomorrow.
See you
Okay.
tomorrow.